I love the Alien franchise, so of course, when they announced a series, I was hyped for it. Now that it's ended, I can say that it was a letdown. Before addressing why this show is bad, I want to highlight its few positive elements. This is because despite everything, I always try to find something positive in products I dislike. I have to bring up when the series does something right, so I can criticize it more accurately. With that said, let's talk about its strengths and weaknesses. Of course, there will be spoilers ahead. First and foremost, the idea of having the xenomorphs share the screen with 4 other species was my primary reason for being interested in the first place. Let's be honest, guys, we all love the xenomorph, but the reality is that after 40 years of the franchise, we are familiar with its design and how it operates. So having 4 new life forms that share the screen with it was probably the best idea the creators came up with. And speaking of alien life forms, the T. ocellus is amazing, and by far my favorite part of the show. Everything about Kirsch and Marrow. Their performances were perfect, and that speech, the one where they discussed their respective natures, synthetic and cyborg, is easily one of the best moments of the show. Then we have something very specific, but I like the marketing of the show. The posters look amazing, and they managed to build up my hype. And finally, I appreciate that they used practical effects for the xenomorph rather than using only CGI. Seeing the xenomorph under the sun reminded me that some things should never be shot in daylight. The xenomorph just looked rubbery and weirdly chubby here. Then we have the Lost Boys concept. It's a perfectly fine idea on paper. In execution, however, they gave all the interesting abilities such as xeno-hearing, tech manipulation, super strength, combat skills to Wendy and basically nothing to all the others. And so as a result, everyone apart from Wendy ends up feeling very superfluous, especially on the rescue mission in the first 2 episodes. Yes, Nibs snaps at some point, but that's it. I'm not entirely sure what was up with the Xenos actions in the episodes 1 and 2. It was incredibly bloodthirsty, and the Gala massacre scene was amazing. It wasn't interested in forming a hive, except that doesn't exactly track with how a lone Xeno should behave. There were eggs already on the ship, but it left them undefended multiple times, which confused me. With a title like Alien Earth, I expected apocalyptic devastation. Instead, we got a slow-burning story about kids, hybrids, and corporate politics on an island. Once again, these ideas aren't bad per se, but I just don't think the way they were utilized fit the franchise. The show's worst aspect is the unbelievable stupidity of most characters. I can excuse the hybrids acting stupid because they're just kids in adult bodies, but the actual adults? In this show, the plot often happens almost purely by making the characters unrealistically idiotic, making them do things nobody would do. And this includes making a multi-trillion-dollar company use a couple of kids for their most valuable mission, having biological weapons and alien creatures in a facility with about 10 employees with no 24/7 monitoring, letting a kid enter the lab freely without supervision, having lethal alien life forms inside glass containers that easily break when they fall, having an opening system so easy to bypass that even alien cockroaches understand how it works, and keeping water you're going to drink next to alien specimens.
Did IQs just drop sharply while I was away?
I swear, the only smart characters in this show are Marrow, Kirsch, and the Ocellus, and one of them is an eyeball. There are plenty of ways to make stuff happen without stupidity. In Jurassic Park, it wasn't stupidity that caused the failure of the park, it was human greed that allowed the dinosaurs to escape. A lot of people called Prometheus pretentious, but the Peter Pan parallels here are so on the nose that they annoyed me. I don't mind parallels. If used well, they can enrich a story. But here it felt as if the writers considered us viewers idiots who needed it explained to us. Making the xenomorph something that can now be domesticated is a really strange choice. Resurrection had already shown us how stupid that idea is. I'm happy to see new takes on things I love, but that's a tough one to take. The whole point of Alien is that man thinks it can control the xenomorph, and then it always does what it's supposed to do: kill. I also don't understand why the scientists don't ask Wendy to tell them what she's saying to the xenomorph. Is it so hard to just ask questions? I won't review every single episode, but I have to go on an in-depth analysis of episode 8, which might be one of the worst season finales I've ever watched. A minor nitpick I have is the time skip at the start. Episode 7 ended on a tense moment, where Wendy is surrounded on the boat and the Xeno is nearby. It would have been interesting to see how that situation was diffused. showing us how her brother had to convince Wendy to surrender. But instead, they just time skip into them being locked up. I thought it was ridiculous that Wendy could control communications, and her ability to communicate with Xenos was even more outlandish. But now she can control synths as well, and her powers feel like a cheap way to get out of every problem. Locked in a cell, she can just open it instantly. Being attacked by a stronger synth, she can now freeze them instantly. I guess this makes more sense than her being able to control the alien, but she already could do so much. Why did the writers feel the need to do this too? Can I also say that seeing Wendy make that stupid face while she makes Xeno sounds is one of the cringiest things I've ever had to witness in a show. I usually don't like to use the word cringe, but I wanted to sink in my chair every time she did that. Let's also talk about how she can make noises with her mouth and a xenomorph potentially miles away can hear her. There is no way it could hear her when she's literally on the other side of the island, but somehow she just makes a clicking noise and it obeys like an attack dog. The scene where Hermit fights off the Ocellus genuinely surprised me because he actually acts smart here. He immediately understands that the Ocellus is dangerous, he hides inside the cage, and when he realizes it's getting inside, he gets out. And this is an actual portrayal of human intelligence. I'm impressed. Unfortunately, this decent scene is followed by this stupid exchange of dialogue.
They're predators. We're food to them.
No, you're food to them.
You serious?
You're supposed to help people.
Says the girl who opened the box letting a giant xenomorph free to kill 3 innocent people. Wendy being pissed at Hermit for shooting Nibs and then saying you're supposed to help people was hilarious, considering Nibs had just torn a man's jaw off and was about to kill someone else. It's even weirder considering Nibs is fine. At least they had Hermit stand his ground and point out that he did it to save someone by shooting Nibs. And speaking about Nibs, what was the point of that pregnancy plot point? It went nowhere. This is followed by that awful flashing light scene, which I won't show on the screen because unlike the people who wrote this scene, I don't hate my viewers. Instead, I'll show you me petting my dog. I don't suffer from photosensitivity, and even I felt pain in my eyes. And why are armed soldiers having so much trouble killing a single xenomorph? In Aliens, just a handful of Marines killed dozens of them. The kids have captured the adults, and I don't understand why Kirsch is here. He helped the 2 hybrids take Arthur to the beach by activating the elevator and not telling anyone. Now they both hate Kirsch and lock him up. I feel like they didn't do anything to set up tension between Kirsch and the hybrids. Also, are we supposed to be rooting for the Lost Boys? Because they looked like complete psychos in this episode. It felt like they were trying to portray Wendy as this badass boss queen, but she just seems like a straight up villain. Let's take a moment to talk about the supposed boy genius, who is actually the dumbest character of this whole show. What was he hoping to accomplish when he told the boys his backstory? And why did he make an elevator with a self-destruct option? What the fuck is happening in this show? It's also absurd to me that he was able to build a functioning synthetic when he was 6 years old. How could he afford the materials when his father was a drunk factory worker? And how exactly did that lead him to become a trillionaire? Ocellus somehow goes all the way to Arthur's dead body, far from the building. They had to drag him miles just an episode ago, and there must have been plenty of dead bodies just in those compounds on the way there. But Ocellus ignored them and went for Arthur for some reason. Wendy's line, "We're in charge now," was embarrassing too. I get that these are kids, but the show went from horror sci-fi to what is essentially now a cheesy coming-of-age story, which has no place in the Alien franchise. I know the show is supposedly not canon, but who is this supposed to appeal to? What is the next season going to be about? Wendy and her gang using their pets to kill nameless Yutani soldiers? Why would anyone want to watch that? This show managed to establish 0 stakes, build 0 tension, and then resolve nothing. We got an uprising with the Lost Boys that didn't progress much, and they're still on the island. Kirsch's motivations weren't revealed, Yutani showing up is season 2 cliffhanger bait, and Ocellus did nothing. I feel like this show should have just been a 9 or 10 episode miniseries with a self-contained story. Nowadays, shows feel like the writers are writing seasons just to get to the next one. It's pure commercialism on full unapologetic display. Just tell the story, don't leave everything open for another season, because you might not get another one. And why must everything be multiple seasons? Have people forgotten how to write a story that simply starts and ends? So in conclusion, Alien Earth had all the ingredients for a great show, but the writers just could not figure out what to do with them. Alien Earth, and in some way the recent Romulus success too, prove there's still life in this franchise. But if it wants to evolve, it needs to be smarter than the humans in its own story. Rest in peace, ship, you will be missed. You were the best character, and your only line was stomp, 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 stomp. And then you took a big shit, expertly foreshadowing the season finale. As always, thanks for watching and have a great day.